Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon and welcome to the post 42, How to Make Change. And this is the start of our coaching series. Let me tell you how we got here. In September last year, Mariana asked me for my views on coaching. And I took that question and that inquiry very, very seriously. And the trope, the methodology of coaching exists throughout our culture through so many different industries. But what does it exactly mean? So as we're positioning ourselves at the start of our new year, and I'm recording this in very early January 2023, I thought it was timely that we think about who we are, where we are, and why it matters. So with all the talk, particularly in the last couple of years, about the new normal, post-COVID, the new normal or returning to normal, what do those phrases even mean? And so what 2021 and 2022 confirmed, I think, is that the problems and the flaws that exist in our COVID system and our pre-COVID system have continued to survive in our time. So all the problems that existed before COVID, so food security, food insecurity, energy security, insecurity, work security, insecurity, the precariat, 0-hour contracts, all these problems pre-COVID are still with us. But something happened to us through COVID. And I think what happened is the institutions that we believed in, that we relied on in times of trouble, like health, like education, like our governments, showed themselves to be flawed, to be brittle. So when we really needed some help and support, those institutions weren't there. But this has intensified our sense of disquiet and our sense of worry. And of course, we then have the failure of leadership. The failure of leadership in all our sectors. We have seen, and it's been amazing as a high theorist to see the high theory performed before us. We have seen Jean Baudrillard's double refusal in every day through the COVID disaster. And of course, what Baudrillard's double refusal was the refusal of leaders to lead and the refusal of citizens to follow that leadership, the double refusal. So, what's the point now? What can make us want to get up in the morning? How do we get beyond survival when surviving is so difficult? Therefore, I'm going to talk about coaching in the post today, why it exists, its strengths, its value, but also its problems and its flaws, and those problems and flaws do worry me a lot, can I say. But then we're going to take this coaching methodology on the road with different questions that are going to follow us through the next few sessions. So we're going to be doing coaching and provocative questions for you through the next few weeks. Now, we are doing this together because that's how the coaching methodology works at its best. So what we're doing is we're owning our journey. We're owning our stories, and we're understanding the transformations to work, to education, to leisure, and to our families. But we also are working on more expansive problems, I think. How we are gaining meaning through our systems and our structures that have failed us. So together, we have to try and understand how to exist and live and thrive in our lives when the systems and the structures are not stable or dependable. So before I define coaching and its strengths and its weaknesses, let me tell you how I became sort of interested in this area. Now, through much of the last 15 years of my life, I've been in leadership positions in universities around the world, and I've had not only academic staff in my direct reports, but I've also had a large number of professional staff, or staff as we refer to them in North America. And this has meant that I've not only been leading university academics, but leading professional staff. And this has been a privilege and a pleasure, because professional staff are the blood and the bone and the skin of our universities. And if you think about it, professional staff are the first people that our students meet when they pick up their phone and do an inquiry, or they walk onto campus and they arrive at a reception desk. So professional staff matter so much. But the professional development programs that exist for academics are completely inappropriate for professional staff. So if you think about, annual performance reviews, or the promotions protocols, and of course mentoring programs, none of this works terribly well for professional staff. And therefore, the career trajectories of those professional staff tend to be neglected in our universities. So, in 2016, and noting that almost all of my direct reports in that job I was in at that time were professional staff, I enrolled in a University of California Davis program titled Coaching Skills for Managers, and it was a certificate, a graduate certificate. The course had 5 very different subjects within it, and I enjoyed all of them. So setting expectations and assessing performance issues, coaching practices, coaching conversations, designing and implementing your coaching strategy, and the capstone part of the certificate, managing as a coach. Very interesting methodology. Now, I enjoyed this course enormously, and I learned a lot. And I recognise that coaching is a way to frame, coaching is a way to shape a learning context and a learning experience for everyone. We create a learning workplace, if you will. So coaching is a modality of learning. And I would argue to this day that the best of managers, let alone the best of leaders, must have the coaching methodology in their portfolio of strategies. So the last few months, and suggested by Mariana's questioning of me about coaching, I then went, you know what, let's go again. So I enrolled in 4 different certificate courses from the IAP Career Coaching College in the United States, and I completed a certificate in life coaching, executive coaching, time management coaching, and wellness coaching. So I did 4 certificates, and again I enjoyed these courses enormously. I learned a huge amount, and of course it was a great experience for me to enroll in courses at a further education college rather than a university or a higher education college, and look at the different ways of teaching. So I enjoyed it on multiple levels. And of course I also coach people. I am very selective, and I work as a coach in 3 particular areas. So yes, PhD coaching is a focus, with attention to, I have major areas that I look at. So improving the relationship between students and supervisors. I also work with students to reconnect themselves with their thesis after a period of suspension or intermission from their studies. I particularly help students who are enrolling in a PhD for their 2nd or their 3rd attempt. So they had a go and then attritted, and what are we going to do differently this time to create success? And of course I help students entering the final year or the final 6 months, so coaching to finish the PhD. But I also coach colleagues at career pivots. So people are unhappy, they're dissatisfied, they're frightened, or they're wanting to make a change. And so at that point in their lives, coaching is actioned, and a methodical, careful career change is put in place a step at a time, assessing strengths and weaknesses on the way through. And finally, I coach carers who have experienced the death of their spouse, and of course the coaching aligns with my death doula certificate and death doula work. And what we do is we work through what I've described as death work. And what I mean is, I work with this extraordinary person who's given so much to another human being, has given of the deep self to accompany that human being to death. And then I work with the carers to carefully and quietly walk with them to step away from death and find a new pathway to their own life. Now, this is incredibly inspiring work, and it is a privilege to be involved with all these remarkable people making changes in their lives. So as you can see, I engage with coaching in lots of different ways. So what we're going to do today is we're going to define coaching, we're going to work through its benefits, but I'm also going to talk through its profound problems, and there are incredibly problematic areas in contemporary coaching, particularly I think with regard to the methodologies and the epistemologies of coaching. And we'll finish off with the key questions that we're going to use to structure the next few weeks of our lives. So we're going to enable you, me, us, to have these moments of reflection, of momentum, of meaning, but also of change. So let's talk about coaching. Coaching has specific goals and imperatives. A coach enables another person to achieve their goals, to persevere through adversity. But I think most importantly, what coaching does, it allows people to move beyond the security of mediocrity, to reach for greatness, to reach for difference, to reach for change. Coaching also creates a culture of accountability, evaluation, and reflection. So a person hires a coach at a particular moment of their lives because they want to make change, and they want someone to work with them, to encourage them, to push them, but to also, if you like, stop the culture of excuses and blame and shame. Coaching is a delicate process, very delicate, and it's a very delicate methodology, and the goal is to facilitate, to enable, to support, to walk with a person making change. So a coach lives in the present of their client. There's no judgment there, and the coach takes a step back from the situation to provide an accurate mirror and offers feedback in a way that challenges the assumptions of the client and encourages, if you will, an alternative way of viewing or thinking or assessing a difficult situation. So, coaches park expectations, and coaching works at its very best, if you like, when it's sorting out and helping a person who is doing too much and they're sort of lost in minutiae, they're lost in detail, and they're overscheduled and they're just busy. Coaching works incredibly well with busy people to work out what's going on. Coaches calmly establish priorities and creates goals within those priorities and accountability measures to meet them. It's also important, I think, to recognise that coaching is not therapy of any kind. So coaches are not psychologists, psychiatrists, or social workers. So coaching focuses on and in the present, not on the past. And there is an argument that coaches work with successful people, and that's true. Working with successful people to make them more successful. And that trajectory actually, and that ideology, comes from the very early history of coaching, where it emerged through financial planning. Yeah. So most of coaching now, I would argue, commences with a person experiencing a problem, and they've had perhaps a radical shift or a change in their lives, and they want to now make a change, but in a careful and predictable way. But coaching does not provide any at all mental health support or advice, and if a client is moving through mental distress, then the coach must immediately recommend therapeutic support structures from professionals. Now, those therapeutic support structures and coaching can occur in parallel, but they're very, very different formations, and the differences between those two formations must be clearly organised. And also, coaches are not consultants. Now, I'm pretty clear on the differences between coaching and consultancy because I do both, and I can tell you clearly the difference. People who hire consultants are looking for clear outcomes, solutions, and recommendations. So what happens is a consultant comes in to an organisation, we do research, and we come to a business having done that research, or an institution, and recommend the best course of action and develop solutions. So we're hired to make recommendations on the basis of evidence with accountability and verification. Now, coaches are different. We work with clients, individuals or groups. We work on a short-term issue to provide a situational solution. So what happens is we walk as a coach alongside somebody. We enable and support that person to reach a decision, to make a change, to think differently about an issue. So when coaches work with organisations, we support a team that is creating something new. So for example, we look at how we create a new marketing plan perhaps, or say a new policy or procedure has been introduced in an institution. And we do, as a coach, what's called socialising the document. So a new policy exists, but a policy doesn't mean anything unless it is socialised, understood and cared about by the people that are going to have to action it, right? So coaches do not arrive into a situation with a solution. They do not leave the situation having provided that solution. That is a consultant. And there are many reasons why I think coaching right now is moving through an incredible boom in numbers. It's got incredible profile and a lot of publishing around it as well. And I think all the reasons that coaching is booming has occurred because of COVID. So a series of surveys during COVID and certainly after COVID have shown the profound degree of dissatisfaction that human beings have in their own lives at the moment. So the majority of the population at different points through the year are feeling disillusioned with their jobs, their relationships, their life. They do not feel valued, and they are desiring independence and flexibility. And of course we can all, as we all do, talk with our friends and our families about what's going wrong in our lives, and that's important. But of course often they agree with us and they're feeling exactly the same way. But we can of course employ a person for a finite period to work with us on a problem so that we can solve that problem. And that's why coaching, I think, is growing enormously. And there are currently 17,500 coaches in North America alone today. The personal coaching industry is worth $2 billion in North America, and that's the 2022 figure. And it's up from $955 million in 2015 and $707 million as a business in 2011. So what's happening is public and private corporations are now using coaching services in good times, but particularly in bad times. So when life coaching and executive coaching is used in business, it has a lot of really positive outcomes. Relationships do improve, teamwork improves, and so does the job satisfaction and the quality of the work. Now, I also have to note that confidentiality is crucial to this work, and the coach is there to care for the client during this period. So the coaching service is not about the coach at all. It is about the client. And it is a safe space to test ideas, and of course contracts are put in place at the start of the coaching that guarantee confidentiality, right? But coaching services are also now being used after restructures. So coaches are brought in as part of what's described as, quote, off-boarding services, end of quote. The other phrase that's used is outplacement consultancy. These are very weird phrases. What do they mean? Well, these are polite phrases to describe quite a tragic situation. So a person is brought in to help a person or many people when they have been sacked or when they have been restructured out of an organisation. So off-boarding services are part of the redundancy package. So a coach is brought in to help another human being write their CV, get a resume right, work out who they are, work out what their goals are, and just help them sort of survive this really terrible thing that's happened to them. So when a company does something pretty diabolical and restructures a lot of staff out of the situation, they then offload the responsibility of eyeballing a human being, taking them by the hand, caring for them, listening to their tragedy, their fear, their rage. And that business is simply parked and given to a coach. So coaching, therefore, is part of the contemporary workplace with all the vagaries and the tragedies of the contemporary workplace. And Thomas Leonard is often described as the father of coaching, and you can see a lot of the origins, the strengths, the problems of coaching from this origin story. He was a former financial planner, and he built from this foundation through the early 1980s to help clients beyond finances live more joyful lives. So Leonard found Coach U in 1992, the International Coach Federation in 1994, and Coachville in the year 2000. And he died of a heart attack in February 2003 at the age of 47. So there's something sort of sad and slightly sort of darkly funny about a human being that has helped other people understand life and work and priorities, that he died at the age of 47. Okay, so there's lots of different types of coaching now, lots of specializations. Just to give you some examples, so we've got career coaching, leadership coaching, executive coaching, relationship coaching, business coaching. Carbon coaching is big and increasing in size radically. We have PhD coaching, we have carer coaching, we have spiritual coaching, which is a big chunk of an area often aligned with particular formal religions or particular churches. We have wellness coaching, and we have, yes, work and life balance coaching. And I'm well aware that there's all sorts of problems with all those words and phrases that I've used there, and I can hear Leanne McRae banging her head against a wall as I say some of those phrases. We'll get back to that shortly. But if coaching has a particular characteristic, then it is a desire to respect but also review the assumptions that a human being carries around with them. Also, it works for an organisation too, but it's about looking at those assumptions and then creating clear goals to excavate, if you will, any limitations on thinking and any contextual barriers that may exist to change, and to ask key questions, but to create space, if you will, for change, for transformation, for growth, and for achievement. So coaching is great. It creates a safe space to try, to test, to provoke, to seek out feedback and accountability on your actions. So life coaching is the generic term. It's like dance music, if you will. There's all sorts of sub-genres that exist below life coaching. Now, life coaching has particular areas of focus. It enables a person to make a life-changing decision, so it exists at a decision point. It enacts career change. It assists stuff like interviewing technique, job search strategies, or indeed, this is a very interesting area, contract negotiations into the job. So a coach comes in when it looks like a job's about to be given and a contract is given, and the coach helps them work through the contract negotiation. Very interesting. So besides individual coaching, there's small, medium and large enterprises that hire coaches to do particular work, particularly if a leadership group is not working, they bring in a coach to try and make it work. And what happens is it exists for a short period, often an hour, for an ongoing basis, but it does end. So the goal of organisational coaching is a little bit different. It is about employee maintenance, retention, but it's also about reducing staff burnout, greater productivity, increased sales, leadership development, skill development, leadership succession planning, or attention to staff after they've been promoted or after they've just been hired. It's an interesting characteristic actually that after a person has been promoted, their performance often goes down because they put all their energy in being promoted. So a coach often comes in after the promotion to create new goals. But we've also got attention to, say, problematic communication systems in a team, conflict resolution's a big one, and creating priorities while reducing stress. So these coaching processes can also be in a training program, so coaches also train. They have instructional design, curricular development, and then they deliver that training. And can I say clearly though, the number one reason coaches are hired around the world is for leadership development. And that's a shame, because all the focus on leadership and individual success means that followership and team success starts to be neglected. So executive coaching is the top end of town in coaching. It's where the coin is, it's where the money is. So what happens is an executive coach comes in and works with the C-level staff in an organisation. So the chief executive officers, chief financial officers, chief operating officers. And this is the oldest model of coaching. So successful people are coached to become even more successful. Now, I actually believe in the diversity of coaching, that all sorts of people can use the methodology of coaching. And I think that's the great gift of what's happened through coaching in the last 40 years or so. It started with leadership, it started with executive coaching, and now it just works with a human being wherever they are, in their own way, on their own terms, with their definition of success. So coaching is a guide on the side, listening, encouraging, or it can be more active, particularly with regard to accountability. Coaching can be in person, obviously it can exist through Zoom, through Skype, through Teams, and also, although it's reducing, tele-coaching, telephone-based coaching also was part of our history. Coaching goes through a series of stages. There is a preliminary session, sometimes called the initial consultation, where the client and the coach meet. They learn about the coaching services, yes, but more importantly, we learn about the client's goals, what they want to achieve and what they think the blockages may be. And in this initial session, you see if the two people actually get on. So these intake preparation systems, initial consultations, are almost always free, and a personal evaluation form is created clarifying the client's goals and focus and the type of coaching to be offered. So the intake form gathers up the client's information, the fee structure, the payment method, and a disclaimer that it's not counselling and it's not therapy. And it's also got a clear statement, if you will, about what the client hopes to accomplish. The first session is the longest. This is the formal paid intake session. It establishes the client's goals, works through the modes, the modalities of coaching most appropriate to that client, but then the focus is on ensuring that the coach and the client understand deeply the client's goals, intentions and expectations, particularly in life coaching, because the whole point of life coaching is to assemble concrete, clear goals. The coaching modes are then discussed, and the preferences about how the client wants to work are also evaluated. Now, there's lots of different coaching techniques and methodologies, and some clients may want homework between sessions, some may not. And these preferences are assessed alongside with the strengths and weaknesses of each of those methodologies. So the degree of accountability they require from the coach is also configured. Does the client want to be held accountable for their process? So every week, what have you been doing this week? This was the goal you put in place. Did you achieve it? That's an accountability measure. Or they could want a looser style. The point of coaching really, at its most basic, are the three P's: prioritizing, planning, and performing. And the key is to not only talk about change, anyone can talk about change, the key is to implement it. And so that requires a subversion of patterns, and different techniques and strategies are used to do that. So the clients must feel free to talk with the coach, ask questions, because the whole point is about creating this comfortable, relaxed, trusting space. The point about coaching though is that the sessions must be finite, and that means they're not ongoing, they're not never ending. There is a goal specifically configured at that intake session, and when that goal is achieved, the coaching stops. So coaching sessions vary in length: 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. Most people use a 30-minute session. I use a 30-minute session, and that's often called laser coaching because it maintains a laser focus. And for challenging sessions where very difficult decisions are being made endlessly, 15-minute sessions are often the best. So when I'm running carer coaching, for example, after the death of a partner, we run it in 15-minute sessions that are much more frequently in the timetable, but they're also much shorter of duration. Group coaching runs for an hour. It's often a cheaper session, and they focus on particular issues or topics that enable peer support. And the costs, we've talked a bit about money, costs vary enormously with coaching. $100 to $150 an hour is the most common figure for coaching, noting that that figure is then broken down into 15-minute sessions or 30-minute sessions. Now, specialist workshops often run by the day, and they're charged at $1,000, $2,000 a day, noting the preparation that's required. And you'll often find that PhD coaching is a little bit more money, and I'll tell you why. Because it can involve drafting and editing, so there's an expense there. You can be running a mock examination, and so the payment per hour can be much higher. So for example, when I worked with one student, it was 1 hour of coaching, but it took me 44 hours of preparation before that 1 hour of coaching emerged. So the fees will always and must be discussed up front. They'll be in a range, and depending on what your goals are, what you want to achieve, that will be the figure that is configured. Now, a lot of coaching is like an iceberg. About 90% of it is below the water. You see the top 10%, 90% exists in preparation. Some coaching, life coaching, most of it is done in the session, so the figure is lower. Coaching has a strong place, I think, in enabling and supporting individuals, groups, organisations to create goals, prioritise goals, and yes, activate those goals. But there are issues and challenges, deep problems in coaching. I'm not glossing over this at all. I'm not remotely evangelical about coaching. A lot of bad stuff happens in this space. So I'll just list for you the big 4 problems to watch. Firstly, biggest one I think, coaching is a highly under-regulated industry. So social work, psychology, nursing, just to name a few professions, are highly regulated industries and professions, and they're credentialised, and the organisations that grant those credentials are assessed and evaluated on a regular basis. That's what regulation is. But of course the trouble is anyone can call themselves a coach. And of course there's gold in their hills, there's a lot of money, and that's why coaching is expanding enormously. So there are coaching qualifications, and I think it is important that those qualifications are verified, they're checked by clients, but also that regulation starts to enter this space. This job can create a lot of damage on a human being. And so therefore credentialing and regulation, I think, are in our future, and I think it's important that it's our very close future. 2, coaching can be completely pointless if both parties do not commit to the goal for change. So yes, talking is important, communication is important, but if either the coach or the client are not committed to the process of change, then nothing is going to actually happen. So the client must be prepared to do the work to make the change, and the coach must be completely focused on that client through the process. Talking and meeting regularly may be pleasant, but it creates no change. So therefore, strong homework, reflection and engagement is required before, during and after each of the coaching sessions. And that's why that intake session is so incredibly important, and it should be clear from that initial session if the relationship is going to work to create change. 3, remember that coaching is a service business, so you need to know that there's a beginning, a middle and an end to that business. Coaches are paid to coach, and they're paid by the hour or the increment of that hour. Therefore, because it is a completely unregulated space, there is a financial imperative for the coach to continue coaching indefinitely. And remember, we are dealing with people who are thinking deeply and going through a period of change, so there may be a vulnerability there. So it is very important that you, as the client, begin with the end in mind. There should be a contract at the start of the process that both parties sign, and it should be focused, I would argue, on achieving one goal. So the coach and the client may then create another contract for another goal. But the goal and the delivery of that goal should be linked to a time frame. Now, if your coach is not focusing on deliverables in each session and working towards that goal, you need to be really aware that there may be a problem there. It's in the coach's interest to keep the coaching going as long as possible. So you, as the client, focus on a task, a deliverable, and put a time limit on that. 4, be aware of the limitations of the coach's role. Now, I moved into PhD coaching very, very carefully. I'll tell you why. I'm a very, very experienced supervisor, and I can solve a lot of problems. But a coach is not a consultant, and a PhD coach is not a PhD supervisor. So I'm very clear with students, I am not your PhD supervisor, I am not your PhD consultant, I am your PhD coach. And that means I will help you to work with your supervisor, but I am not your supervisor. But it also means I can do sorts of other really interesting side functions, like run mock PhD examinations, for example, coach students how to do PhD exams. So a coach cannot solve your problems, but they can help you solve your problems. So with these 4 caveats in place, let's talk about the type of questions we're going to work through in the next 4 weeks. Next few weeks, it'll be a bit longer than that. These coaching questions are trying to intervene for you to create a new normal so that I can get you out of the fear and the worry and the confusion. And I know what's going on at the moment. The fear and confusion around 24/7 working practices, complete fear, complete paranoia, and can I say often quite justifiable fear and paranoia, arbitrary power, shoddy and shambling appointment processes, a lack of ethics, a lack of accountability, a lack of responsibility, the loss of boundaries between public and private lives, and a rise in bullying, narcissism, rudeness, humiliation and disrespect. That is the reality of our time. Now, I receive thousands of emails that present catastrophic stories about the consequences of these behaviours on a person's life. But none of us can sit in fear and confusion, the invasion of our privacy. None of us can sit in humiliation and fear forever. So I've constructed a series of questions, coaching questions, to intervene in your assumptions, work at the very edge of your comfort level and give you something to think about. It might be on your walk, on a commute, or on your cross trainer. And remember, I'm not remotely suggesting this is the way to live. I am not remotely applying the Mandalorian maxim, this is the way. I'm not doing that. There are many ways. So what I'm going to do is present a question, present some options to you. You can take my options, take them for a walk. If they fit, embed them in your life. If they don't fit, put them in the bin. And remember, I know the strengths, I know the weaknesses of coaching, therefore I'm going to be presenting a critique as well. So there's no evangelical moments here that we're going to talk about. So here are the questions I thought we would talk about in the next few weeks. What is your mission statement? How do you create a goal? Why do you procrastinate? How can you control what you can control? How do you manage critics? How do you manage setbacks? How do you build momentum? How do you know when to adapt or when to hold the course? How do you hold yourself accountable? And finally, why do your actions, does your work matter? Now these are big questions. So whether you're working hard at a job you absolutely hate, or you're worried that your organisation is going to restructure, or you're just frightened all the time, or you're just feeling unstable all the time, there may be a step forward here for you. And as always with this channel, we walk side by side. We all walk together. So let's help each other. So I want to finish off today with a bit of homework for us all in the next 7 days. Here is our first coaching question. Think about the last 30 days of your life. What if those last 30 days of your life was actually the story of your entire life? What does the story of those 30 days tell us about you, about your goals, about your hopes, about what matters to you? Now then, after we've pondered the life story of the last 30 days, ask yourself, is that the story that you want to continue through the next 30 days, through the next month, through the next year, through the next 30 years? So let's all do that homework together and let's begin again. I wish you love, light and peace. Tea out.